am one of the co-founders. Oh yeah, got it. There we go. It always makes me do that. I'm one of the founders of A4 Health, and we've been working with Shattuck for a couple of years now, with nutrition and helping you guys perform at your best. I obviously believe, I'm biased, but I do think that nutrition is a key pillar to the whole thing. If you're working so hard in your sport and in your academics and everything, literally the building block of that is nutrition. So we've got to pay attention to it. And tonight we're going to talk about, well, if I can get this rocking and rolling here, let's see if I can get my slideshow mode going. Oh, now I do that and then I can't find you guys again. Hold on. In theory, I always think I've got this right, but there we go. Share. Okay. It's going. And
success.
There we go. Now slideshow mode. Beautiful. Okay, awesome. So this is the third of the fall series on nutrition, and we're going to do sleep and immune optimization. They work together. I always say your body is a system, so nothing works in isolation. So we can't just say, oh, we're going to work on sleep and not consider the other factors that influence it, like nutrition or exercise. And we can't think that sleep doesn't impact immune system and immune system impacts sleep. And then ultimately, all of these work together to influence your performance. And I know that sleep can be a challenging thing for some people. Some people it's not, but let's talk about it. I actually want to talk about it in the realm of health and nutrition. Obviously, I'm a dietitian, but I want to talk about it also from a priority set. And I know that your lives are full of lots of things, including travel and living in a dorm setting. So there's a lot of factors that influence the quality of your sleep. So let's make nutrition be something that helps it. So what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to talk about why sleep is vital to performance. How does that actually relate? And when you're young, especially for those of you who are in high school right now, your bodies are somewhat resilient and they can kind of power through things even when you're not doing the most optimized things like getting quality sleep. But how much better could you perform if your sleep was optimized? So we're going to talk about how sleep and performance are tied together. Also, how the immune system is affected by sleep, what affects sleep negatively. That's different for different people. But we'll talk about some of the big factors that are out there. And that way we can think about what can we do to help mitigate that, help fix it. And then what are ways we can optimize sleep and immune function with nutrition? And then we're also going to look at habit loops and behaviors for better sleep. So I love talking about behavioral science and changing, behavior, because having knowledge is great, but if we don't put in things that help us change behavior, it's kind of empty, right? Knowledge doesn't always make us go into action. So we'll talk about that a little bit here today. So what is sleep and why do we need it? Well, sleep is defined as like a reversible thing, because think about it. If you don't sleep, you're actually reversing the benefits of sleep. So it's a reversible, naturally occurring state characterized by closed eyes, reduced body movement, and reduced responsiveness to external stimuli. You also have a reduced breathing rate. So your body just goes into sort of this low metabolic zone. And in that is when all that cleanup and recovery and repair can happen. It also is when the brain sort of detoxifies itself. So when you get into that deep sleep, there's a process that happens within our brain that kind of is like power washing or spray washing the street. So this is why when you try to pull all-nighters and study and things like that, it isn't always beneficial because you're not getting that detoxification that actually helps that neural function work a lot better. So it's vital for physiological and psychological functions that are probably, important to everybody, but particularly athletes, right? So when we think about game performance and match performance, it isn't just about your physical capabilities. It's also about your cognitive or your thinking awareness. And so having proper sleep is super important to that. And we do know that sleep deprivation can have a significant effects on athletic performance, especially in high intensity, submaximal, and really prolonged exercise. And even that day-to-day repetitive intense workouts that most of you are doing in your sport. So poor sleep can also negatively affect your mood. We all know this. We're humans. We're living this, right? So we know that that happens. It can affect learning, your memory, your thinking ability or cognition, even pain perception. So pain perception can seem much, you could feel like you're in much more pain when you're sleep deprived. And it's very involved in your immune system. So when you sleep properly, it actually stimulates the immune response. So those different neurotransmitters and those different chemicals that are built for your immune system happen a lot during a sleep mode. It also means nutrition with protein as well. But when we do sleep, because we're doing that repair and recovery, we're also increasing protein synthesis and muscle mass. Testosterone, human growth hormone, all of those get increased by proper sleep. So in reverse, they are decreased without good sleep. And actually, one of the other interesting things, it's not on this chart, but it increases calcium retention and strengthening of bone mass. So if you think about building bone mass for a lifetime, that's important, but also making sure that you have strong bones throughout your sports life. And obviously, fractures are a common injury that happens to athletes. So these factors can ultimately reduce an athlete's nutritional, metabolic, and hormone status, and hence, potentially reduce physical and mental health. Teenagers, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, are notorious for getting the least amount of sleep. It's also because you need a large amount of sleep. So in the ideal world, teenagers need at least 7 hours of sleep, but ideal is between 8 and 10 hours. And that is not happening for 97% of teenagers. So sleep and performance, it's an important part of recovery. And what's interesting about it is we do know that there's some evidence that sleep is improved by exercise. So those who are moderate exercisers, habitual moderate exercisers, tend to have better sleep. But we have seen research that shows that intense activity, and I work with a lot of endurance athletes. So, and especially those of you who are in your sport on that daily grind, doing tournaments, things like that. So super intense activity can actually have an opposite effect and raises some of those stress hormones in the body that diminish or decrease your sleep quality and are associated with sleep disturbances. So we really have to work on some factors that help with our sleep hygiene, and nutrition is one of those. And the other things that you're dealing with, right, are travel, jet lag, hotel rooms, which aren't notoriously quiet. People have roommates, even in the dorm setting. And then when you do travel, you've got varying times for games, meets, matches. All of that plays a role. And even when you're at home too, sometimes you're playing morning, sometimes you're doing your sport at night. And so that can really wreak havoc on your circadian rhythms and your body's normal sleep response. Some of you are morning larks and some of you are night owls. Teenagers tend to be more of night owls and can stay up later, but every body is different. And even so, my husband, even in college, he could stay up late, but not as late as everybody else. And he's a morning lark. So even as a teenager in early 20s, he struggled with staying up late. And that could be true of some of you, and you might be asked to do that because of your sport. So how does sleep affect athletic performance? Well, we've said a lot of things that are in here, but I think inadequate sleep really, there's a lot of things in the slide, and you guys can look at it, but I'm going to speak to some other things too. So one of the interesting things about lack of sleep is that it can increase your appetite. And while that sounds like a good thing, it can be, except what happens is the neurotransmitters that tell you that you're tired are the same ones, and they work in the same area that tell you that you're hungry. So a lot of times we mistake hunger for sleep. And so one of the tactics that I often tell people is if you've eaten an adequate meal and you are starting to feel like, oh, I want to have sugar, salt, fat, like just snacky, crappy food, it's probably your body telling you that you're tired. So just go to bed. And one of the other things is people often crave ice cream late at night. And one of the reasons of that is because you're dehydrated. So dehydrated, and then you've got the sugar in the ice cream, and sugar has a nice calming effect on the body. So instead of getting that sleep, you get that calming effect from the sugar, and then you get hydrated a little bit from the ice cream. So that's why there tends to be an ice cream craving late at night, or sugary beverages, because it's going to do the same thing. So a big thing here is that when you have inadequate sleep, it actually increases inflammation. And even though you're young, inflammation is the thing that you're constantly battling, because as an athlete, you are working hard and you are getting inflamed from doing your sport. And chronic inflammation can lead to illness, it can lead to injury, and ultimately lower immune system. The other things about sleep and why it's important is brain function. And you have to be smart in school and you have to be smart in your athletics. So we definitely see diminished performance in that sort of like game awareness in athletes when they're sleep deprived. And just your body battery is running low, right? Your tactical performance, so your ability to shoot, kick, throw, all the things, run fast, all the things that you're being asked to do diminish with sleep deprivation. And so how does this how does this affect, the immune system? So we'll get a little sciencey here, but without sufficient sleep, your body makes fewer cytokines. And cytokines are a type of protein that actually targets infection and inflammation, so effectively creating an immune response. So cytokines are produced and released during sleep, so causing a double whammy if you skip on sleeping. And so looking at this slide a little bit on the other side, I put this on here because I think it's important. Only 1 in 10 Americans consider sleep to be their top priority over fitness, work, hobbies, and social life. And it's such a tough balancing game. And we think that we can make up for it on the weekends, and often we can't. And we sabotage ourselves in ways that diminish even the quality of sleep. So even if we're trying to get to bed at a certain time, we have trouble falling asleep, or we're getting disrupted sleep. If you look at effect on exercise and immune function, again, there's this sweet spot. And some of you are working out so hard and do your sport so hard. We do know that people are more at risk for like upper respiratory infections when they lead a sedentary lifestyle. And we also see that people are more at risk, that it's a big toll on somebody's immune system when they're doing intense activity over and over again. So more important is to focus on nutrition. Everybody should, to help with their sleep and to help with their immune function. But if you're an athlete who's got all of that intense exercise, it's even more important to do that. Ultimately, research has shown too, because your cognitive function, your physical abilities, your immune system is all affected by lack of sleep. You're also at increased risk of injury. And we do see this. We also see this with people who are sleep deprived, who are more at risk for motor vehicle accidents, right? So it's literally, any sort of motor skill, any sort of cognitive, critical thinking function goes down when you're sleep deprived. So what are major causes of poor sleep? Well, honestly, a poor sleep schedule. And this is really difficult in an academic setting. I get it. But I usually have people look at their calendar and go, what are the days of the week? Could I even get 4 days in the week where I'm on a regular sleep schedule? But bad nutrition and blood sugar imbalances. So we see this with especially late night eating, with a lot of like high fat foods or things that are really hard to digest. Going to bed on a really full stomach is really difficult for your body to adjust and to regulate overnight. So it really does cause disruptive sleep. We also know going to bed hungry disrupts sleep. So it's about having a moderate level of food, if possible, 1 to 2 hours, at least 2 hours ideally, before you go to bed. But I know, because the sports are late, sometimes you're eating and then you're going right to bed. So it's about trying to eat high quality foods and to eat it in moderation so that you're not super full when you go to bed. Nutrient deficiencies, we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. Obviously, LED light exposure. So when we've got our phones, any of those blue lights, any of those things are definitely going to affect it. And there's other things as well. But so what are things that you can actually do about it? Well, you can limit caffeine. Caffeine is a 3-hour half-life, meaning when I ingest caffeine, let's say it's 100 milligrams, then 3 hours later, we're at about 50 milligrams that's still circulating in our body. And then after another 1 to 2 hours, depending on how you metabolize, then it clears the system. But we do know that while caffeine is an ergogenic aid, so it can help with your sports and performance in some people, it also can massively disrupt sleep. So limiting that, avoiding large fatty meals before you go to sleep, and then trying to create as much of a healthy sleep environment as you can. And, my daughter's in college right now at the University of Minnesota, and she loves her roommates, but they're also very loud roommates. And so she wears noise canceling headphones when she goes to bed, and she's got a white noise app that she listens to. Once in a while, she said it's so like the way her room's positioned, she has to put like a mask over her eyes because it's so bright, and she can't get new shades because she's renting an apartment. So here's one of my favorite ones too, is just talking about what are the good things that we can do and what are the things that affect our sleep in a poor way. So let's get into the nutrition part. So oftentimes, so glycemic index, I'm going to look at that first bullet point over here. What the heck is a high glycemic index food? This is typically something that's higher in carbohydrates. And so something that sort of raises your blood sugar. And that can seem like a bad thing, like it would be energizing. But actually, what it can do is it'll raise your blood sugar, but it also interacts with neurotransmitters in your brain and becomes a nice calming effect. So carbs can really be calming. Plus, if you're an athlete, you need to restore your glycogen stores anyway. So this is where we store our energy for the next day, our carbohydrates for the next day is in our muscles. And so after we've done an athletic event, this isn't a bad thing. Have some high quality carbohydrates, whether that's starchy vegetables, like potatoes, or good sources of carbs in the grain form, like rice, some fruit. These are all good ways, even, like a high quality bread and have a sandwich. Any of those things can really help you relax, calm down, and also fill up your glycogen stores so that you're ready to go with all your carbohydrate stores being filled up for the next day. Diets high in carbohydrates, especially for that restorative meal before you go to bed, you can fall asleep quicker. That's what shorter sleep latencies means. It means you fall asleep quicker. Diets high in protein also improves sleep quality because tryptophan, which is an amino acid, is a key component to producing serotonin and ultimately melatonin. So those are things that help you sleep. So that's why high protein can really help. There is some studies that show that taking a small dose of tryptophan, so 1 gram of that, may improve. It's just an amino acid, so it's just part of protein. So it's not like anything wacky. It's just taking the amino acid tryptophan may improve sleep quality. Melatonin may decrease sleep onset time, meaning that you fall asleep quicker. We can talk about that with a Q&A at the end. Melatonin can be a hard thing to kick yourself out of, so you can actually end up feeling groggier the next day. So I do sort of hedge on that one a little bit. But iron, zinc, magnesium, all of those things really important in sleep quality. Magnesium glycinate, so that particular form, or threonate, and we'll type, I can type that in the chat later. Those two forms of magnesium taken an hour to a half hour before bedtime. First of all, it's a mineral that our body needs in 160 different metabolic functions, but also very important for sleep quality. Now, on the other side, low energy intake. So if you're not eating enough, if you're not fueling enough, that can really disrupt your sleep. It can disrupt your repair functions that your body needs to get set for the next day. So this is actually, so while we don't want to eat too much that our bellies are super full before we go to bed, we also don't want to restrict food because that affects our ability to repair and restore and be ready for the next day. High fat diets also, so having like fried fatty foods before you go to bed can decrease total sleep time. Diets that are low in copper, vitamin K, and B12 also can affect sleep as well. So what are some foods that improve sleep? These are just a few, and we can, during the Q&A, we can talk more about it. Turkey, obviously we hear about that at Thanksgiving, but it is high in the amino acid tryptophan. Doesn't mean you need to eat turkey all the time, but it is a good source of tryptophan. Dairy products, if you can take dairy, and not all of you are able to ingest dairy, but if you can, it has a very scientifically proven calming effect because of tryptophan. And also if you make like a warm milk drink, it also has that calming effect with just having the heat element to it. But herbal tea can help with that too. So chamomile tea, peppermint tea, anything without caffeine. So you want an herbal tea. Those are things that can help like calm your body. Chamomile especially has antioxidants that really help improve sleep. Tart cherry juice, one of my favorite things to talk about. We use it quite a bit with our NHL players. We buy cherry bundy, we get it in the little packs. We also put it in their smoothies. A lot of the guys will make that before they go to bed as well, or after a game. We are almost always putting tart cherry juice in the guys' smoothies. So as they leave the rink and go home, they've got something that will help both do repair and restore, but also help them sleep because it contains melatonin naturally in it. And then fatty fish, obviously that helps because of the omega-3s. And then almonds. Almonds have the highest amount of melatonin and magnesium. So those are also, it's also a great choice. And here's some immune boosting foods. There's many more than these, but you know, it's an infographic, so we can only put so many on there. But the key to this is produce, to be honest. I mean, other than the fatty fish, when you want to boost your immune system, you want to have fruits and vegetables, because what makes them colorful usually, or what provides their color, are these phytonutrients and these chemical compounds that, in addition to vitamins and minerals, actually help boost your immune function and help it optimize in the best possible way. Ginger can be really helpful too in nausea. So if you're dealing with that for a variety of reasons with your sport, not only does it boost your immune system, but it also has a calming effect as well. We all know that citrus fruits are good because it's got vitamin C in it. So definitely go for that. So sort of in summary, like what should we care about in nutrition? Well, higher carb foods an hour before bed, ideally an hour, not like 5 minutes before or not 2 hours before, can promote sleep. So quality matters. Starchy veggies, rice, sweet potatoes, also protein. We talked about that. Definitely part of what makes immune cells, and it also promotes sleep quality. Diets low in calorie decreases immune cells in response and lowers sleep quality. Diets high in fat negatively affect sleep quality. And then magnesium glycinate, like I mentioned before, super for me. Literally, I take about 260 milligrams. It can take anywhere between 260 and 400 milligrams. I take it about a half an hour before I go to bed. I am out like a light, and it just relaxes me, relaxes my muscles. I have some really deep quality sleep. But there's some other micronutrients there that are really key to both immune and sleep quality. So can't say enough about how important it is to care about your vitamin and mineral consumption. And then hydration. All cells run better when they're hydrated. So making sure that you keep up with that, including electrolytes in it too, so that that water can actually go into your cells. And then whole foods, especially plants, fiber, phytonutrients, live it, caffeine. Hopefully alcohol is not part of the equation, but alcohol really disrupts sleep. Sugar can also put your body on a roller coaster as you sleep. So you're sleeping, but your sleep quality is decreased. And then processed foods in general are really hard on your body to maintain high quality sleep. And then enjoy herbal teas. So I want to spend a little bit of time before we get into the Q&A and get into a lot of specifics around supplements and other questions that you guys have, is talking about habit loops. And we all get in these loops that either promote good behavior or those that promote negative behavior. And we don't even know that it's happening to us sometimes, and why we are sabotaging our sleep, why we're sabotaging our food choices. But everybody kind of goes into this habit loop, right? So we get some sort of trigger, the reminder of us to do a certain routine. And maybe at the end of the day, your trigger is like you start to get sleepy and you crawl into your bed or like a cozy little spot, and your routine is to like scroll on your phone. So you've got that blue light like glaring into your eyes. You're getting a lot of information shoved into your brain, whether you're on social media or anything else. And so that already is putting your brain in overdrive and not in a quiet sleep place. And then your reward, I mean, your reward is you think you're relaxing and that it's like me time, but actually what it's doing is sabotaging your sleep. So the key to all of this is you're always going to have a cue or a trigger that like you get sleepy, and your routine is that you hop into bed. But what, or your reward is that you feel relaxed and all of that. But how can your routine when you go into bed be different than scrolling your phone or something else that disrupts your sleep, or snacking in bed, or choosing high fat sugary things before you go to bed? So thinking through that a little bit, like, how can I change the routine a little bit? Yeah, I might hop into bed or get in a cozy place, but what am I going to do that's going to feel relaxing? Maybe it's a cup of tea. I love bone broth too. That might be a reach for all of you guys, but bone broth is one of my great calming things to do. It's high in protein, it's high in electrolytes. So it's super nourishing and something that can help give that calming effect. And then sometimes it's just listening to calming music without that visual there, right? So thinking through what are the different routines that you could have when you get that trigger that you're tired and you want to crawl into bed. So I whizzed through that in a half an hour. Whoop, whoop. I wanted to make sure, because there's lots of different questions around that. So you guys can absolutely, turn your mute off if you want, or I'm gonna pull over to the chat right now and look at some of the questions that you guys have too. If you want to screenshot my email address here right now, please do that. What we don't answer today, if you guys want to shoot me an email, I'm more than happy to take those as well. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. So take that picture if you want to right now. And now I'm going to go to the chat if I can. My computer's being weird. Sorry about that. Hold on. I don't know what's going on with my computer. Okay, here we go. Okay. Any other nuts good for magnesium and melatonin, or almonds significantly better? Almost all nuts have some level of magnesium in there. That's the beauty of it. Brazil nuts actually have a lot of magnesium, but they're kind of weird nuts. I think they're kind of weird nuts. I love cashews. They are lower in magnesium. I know almonds aren't like my favorite of the nut category. If you can get your hands on them, you should try some sprouted almonds. They have like a fun crisp to them. So they actually soak them in water for a little bit, and then they roast them, and they, like, I don't know, it's the best way to eat an almond. But it's a good question, and I would say that almonds are probably still, they're the top, but all nuts have a little bit of magnesium in it. Does working out later in the day affect my sleep? If so, what's the latest an athlete should skate or work out? Sometimes you don't have control over that, right? And there's nothing you can do about it. But ideally, you should separate any sort of workout 2 hours before bedtime. So if you can, and that still means that you can get 7 to 10 hours of sleep in a night. Sometimes I work out at 7 o'clock at night, get done around 8, and it takes me until like 10:30 where my body feels ready to go to bed. So there definitely is that wind down time. And usually the recommendation is at least 2 hours from the time you're finished to the time you want to go to bed. I was suggested to take a B12 supplement. Could that be an issue? No, actually. So it's being low in B12. Being low in B12 is actually a negative for sleep. Now, some athletes, I'll give you a little insight. So we do micronutrient testing on our NHL players, and I had several of them this year that had really high B12. And that's because they were doing injections of B12. And that's really the only way that you're going to skyrocket it that much. And too much B12, the problem is all these micronutrients work together. So if you have a really high B12, it's going to affect your folate levels because they work together, but they also compete if one is sort of a higher ratio than the other. So I usually tell people, most of us don't get enough B12, and B12 is very essential for energy metabolism. I'm going to type in something, so I can't talk for a second because I can't spell and talk at the same time, but I'm going to write something for you all in the chat. And see, I still can't spell. All right. So I definitely recommend, can you guys all see that? Oh, a direct message to Sage, and it didn't go to everyone. How do I make that for everyone? You don't want to just direct message. All right, so what I was trying to type in there that only Sage can see is methylated B vitamins. And the methylated or methylation, some of you might have been exploring that and why it's important. It's a big conversation in the athlete world. And it's because about 40% of us don't methylate properly, meaning that we don't break down the B vitamins properly. And that can be a problem for our energy. And it's such cool science that's really starting to get traction now. And there's a way to test if you've got a gene variant that shows that you've got methylation issues. So you can go get a methylation test. But the other way to know if you have it is if you check your B12 and your B12 is low, and your homocysteine is high, if you've got that combo and if your folate's low too, then most likely you've got a methylation issue without having to take the methylation test. But what I tell my NHL players is it doesn't matter because all we're doing is skipping a step. So even if you don't have a methylation issue, taking a methylated B vitamin isn't going to affect anyone in a negative way. And for 40% of us who don't methylate correctly, it actually enhances our ability to absorb it. So it's kind of like, like a lactate enzyme breaks down the lactose for you. So you don't have to have that to do it. Methylated B vitamins put it in a form where it's broken down a little bit easier. And so Thorne is a great product for it. And no, I don't get kickbacks for talking about it. We use Thorne in the NHL because it's NSF approved. They've got a line that is, but they've got a B vitamin called Methyl Guard Plus. And that is one that's high quality B vitamins. Long story short. So, Joe, you probably didn't want that long of an answer on your B12 supplement thing, but you got a long answer. Pretty passionate about it right now because I've seen a lot of my athletes do so much better when switching to methylated B vitamins. So, anywho, there's that. And I think but there's nothing wrong with taking a B12 supplement. You don't have to take it every day, even. And they all work together. So find one that's got all the B vitamins in it, not just B12. So that's my other recommendation. Yes, naps can be an amazing thing, and I love it. So I've got a friend who's a sleep hygiene specialist, and we talk about this quite a bit. And some of you probably already know this, but there's a sweet spot to napping. And so napping can actually be very restorative. And I miss naps. I don't take them as much as I used to. And if you can squeeze them in, it absolutely can. But the sweet spot is around sleeping around anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. It seems like that's not enough. But typically, if you take a nap longer than that, it affects your sleep later in the day, harder to fall asleep. You can end up waking up groggy too. But if you get that 10 to 20-minute nap time, ooh, you can just like rocket fuel. You get right back in it, and it really helps with restoration and repair. So the little trick is to use your phone. So a lot of times people will, because it takes a little bit to fall asleep. So I usually recommend that you set your alarm for a half an hour after because it takes you a bit. So roughly, hopefully you fall asleep and still get that 10 to 20-minute nap in there without oversleeping. And yes, it counts as your sleep goal. Any other questions? I'm going to write, and now I learned how I can change it to not just be sage. There we go. Woo, to everyone. And I'll tell you, I used to, so as a very type A, high functioning, blah, 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 like wanted to be involved in everything kind of person in high school and college. I ended up not prioritizing sleep. And I used to say, oh, I'll sleep when I die. That was literally a quote that I used to say. And I think about how much better I would have performed if I would have gotten sleep. And now, as an endurance runner, which I am, and I'm old, I do realize the value of sleep, and getting into those sleep habits now, even if it's 4 days a week. That's what I'm telling people. It's like, I know you've got crazy lives, and I know that it's not going to be every day. I'm not every day. I'm a human. I'm not like doing it perfectly every day. Last night, I got almost 8 hours of sleep. Yay me. Tonight, probably not. I'm kind of seeing how the whole thing is going here, and it's probably good because I have to get up early for work. I probably get more like 6. But anytime you can prioritize that, prioritize naps, everything you do will be better, because sleep isn't something that it's easy to just discard, but it's actually one of the most vital things for our overall health, and especially immune function. So your immune system and your risk of injury, 2 things that are just awful for athletes to happen: being sick and being injured. And what can you do to prevent that? Sleep. Like sleep. Now, injury happens sometimes just because it does, but when your brain isn't functioning right, or you feel weak, or you're not in your strongest mode, injury will happen much more easily. Are there NSF certified supplements? Is magnesium better taken by oil cream on skin or by a pill? Yes, there are NSF certified magnesium supplements. Thorne's got one. There's several brands that do. So you just type in Google NSF approved magnesium. Sometimes they come in powder, sometimes they go in pills. So sometimes when you're talking about, is there a better way to take it? A lot of our like hockey players, they'll just throw it in their like restorative smoothie. So their end of the day smoothie along with their tart cherry juice and all that kind of stuff. So you can put it in a smoothie or powder in powder form. Pills fine. It's hard to regulate the oil and the cream. It's hard to know how many milligrams you're actually getting. So I kind of like it better. I like to know what I'm getting and where's my sweet spot, where it works. So I think pill or powder form is probably the best, just because you know what level you're actually getting in your body. And Maggie's got a question mark, and I don't know what the question mark is about, but if you want to, oh, there we go. There we go, because it was the question above it. Got it. Thank you. Now I'm seeing it like populate. These are awesome questions. Anything else that you guys can think of? I know I threw a lot at you guys tonight.
I think this is a really great start. I think that this is we're just taking a step each time that we do these, and I think that this is a really good jumping off point for us to continue on with this conversation. I think that once we start to kind of disseminate all this information and start to kind of put it all together, I'm sure there'll be more questions as we go on. And maybe down the road and we do these in when we get back in the winter and the spring, hopefully we'll be able to add on to those. So this is
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because we can get into very specifics. This is definitely a good overview of it, but specifically, like talking about smoothie recipes and things like that. Like I had mentioned, I mean, it's not a secret what we do. So a lot of times we'll, like for our athletes, we'll do, depends on their dietary needs, but some athletes will use some sort of protein powder. So whether it's an animal protein like whey protein or a plant-based protein, depending on the athlete. So we do that. We usually mix with berries because it's high fiber, high nutrients, tart cherry juice, some water because tart cherry juice is a lot, like it's potent. And then some of the guys will do they'll do some magnesium glycinate in their recovery smoothie. And then it does vary. And some guys add glutamine because that helps with repair and things like that. But that's kind of the basic. Sometimes we do fish oil because some guys don't want to take it as a pill. But again, going back to that fat that helps with sleep and neurotransmitters and things like that. So that's a recipe right there. You got a recipe and kind of the restorative sleep smoothie, at least of the San Jose Sharks and the Minnesota Wild. So you got that. But yeah, anything else you guys have? I mean, Joe's right. There's a lot of information here. I think coming back, we could really talk about like specifics to like choose this. These are great items. This is a way to make a smoothie, like the one that I gave you here. But this was the reason to believe. And so as you think about going into finals week and the holidays, it's how can I prioritize something that really is a major factor in my performance? What are some food choices that I can make that can help nourish and calm me versus excite my body? And what are some ways that I can put in good sleep hygiene habits and calm myself and calm my body?
All right, and I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. Again, you've got my email. By all means, reach out to me. And again, I'm grateful to have you guys spend your time with me tonight. Appreciate it. Sleep well. Sleep well, everyone.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks. All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you.